So, the Brooklyn Nets, the mid of the mid, the mid of Brooklyn. I don't know. I'm not good at nicknames sometimes. They are one of the teams of all time, and I would argue the one with the worst future in the NBA, or at least one of them. You know, it's like them, the Bulls, like the middle of the pack teams. That's where you don't want to be in the NBA, or in most sports, frankly, unless it's like the the Premier League. You don't want to get relegated. You don't get that in American sports, so you're left with the middle being the worst place to be, because if you're bad, you get a Victor Wembanyama, you get a Brandon Miller, you get a Scoot Henderson, you get a Thompson twin, right? If you're good, then you get to compete in the playoffs. You get to go on a couple of deep runs, even if it's just the second round, the conference finals. You're having some playoff success, and you might not be a contender, but you're having fun as a fan, rooting for that, The Nets, on the other hand, boy. They are currently sitting at 11th in the Eastern Conference, which is the worst conference between the East and the West, and they can't even crack the play-in. But also, they're not nearly bad enough to get a top 5 pick, top 6 pick, and even if they were, they don't have their pick. They do have Phoenix's unprotected first this season, and a couple of seconds, but besides that, they don't have their pick. Or they have Phoenix's pick next year, I should say, not this year. But, they don't have a pick this season, and they're left with Mikal Bridges, with Dennis Schroeder, with their only good young pieces really being like Cam Thomas. Nick Claxton, I guess, is still young. He's only 24. Keon Johnson, Dariq Whitehead have, some fans out there. Harry Giles is no longer on the roster, actually, now that I think about it. But you're left with a bunch of role players who would be good on other teams, like Royce O'Neal went to the Suns, and he's a really good role player. Cam Johnson would be a really good role player for a lot of different teams. Dorian Finney-Smith is a role player through and through. Nick Claxton would be a great backup big, or, like fifth starter for a team. Mikal Bridges is the ultimate role player. He's currently overextended on offense and is not the defender he once was, but I think he would get back to being an all-defensive caliber guy if he was in a reduced role. So, what do you do if you're the Brooklyn Nets? Because, I'll be honest, I don't know. You traded a bunch of your picks to get James Harden, and then James Harden left, then Kyrie left, then KD left. And you're left with, they don't have no picks. They're not the Phoenix Suns. They do have some picks. They have Phoenix picks all the way up until 2029, which those picks should be good by then. But also, in the meantime, you don't really have anything to play for, right? Because if you're bad, you don't have your own picks. If you're good, you're not good enough to get to the playoffs, or let alone to win a series, because they're not winning a series, right? The next time that they have their own pick is in 2027. Houston can swap the pick, so if they're better than Houston, I guess they'd have it then. But, besides that, they don't have their own pick until 2028. So for the next 3 years, 4 years, 3 or 4 years, they don't have their own pick. So they're stuck in no man's land, because they can't be bad, because then someone else gets a top pick. But they can't be good either, because Mikal Bridges is not good enough to be a primary on a championship team. He's just not. Or on a playoff team, even. Cam Thomas has been fun this year. He's been solid. He's averaging 21.3 points a game, 3 rebounds, 2.7 assists. He's shooting decently enough, 44, 37. Splits aren't fantastic, but they're not bad. And for the volume he's shooting, that's not that bad, but also Cam Thomas is a player of a archetype that is not really good in the NBA. He's basically a Zach LaVine archetype where he's not doing anything besides scoring, really. And while that has its place on, like a championship contender coming off the bench sort of role, a Lou Williams sort of role, doesn't really translate to a ton of floor raising, right? And they could cash in on a lot of these pieces, They could trade Dorian Finney-Smith for probably a first. They could trade Nick Claxton for a good amount. I'm sure you could get multiple picks for Nick Claxton. You could get some stuff for Mikal Bridges. I know that people are like, oh, they offered 4 firsts. The 4 first thing is misleading, right? I know some people who know things, and those picks were all very heavily protected and late picks. So, like, it wasn't for good first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. It was going to be, like, 2 that actually conveyed, and they were going to be 21 and 25 or something like that. Like, they were not good picks. But I'm sure you could trade Mikal Bridges for, like, 2 good picks and a young player, or, like, a young player and a first-round pick, depending on, the caliber of young player you're trying to get. But, like, you could cash in on a lot of these chips and get picks like the Thunder did, which is probably what I would do if I was the GM. If I was Sean Marks, I'd be like, all right, I've played my hand a couple of times, time to cash in my chips, and I would get out what I could, because you could accumulate a decent amount of picks. Like, they have other teams' picks. They have the 2025 Phoenix first. 2027, they have a Phoenix first and a Philadelphia first that's top 8 protected, and a pick swap with Houston. Houston holds the rights to the swap. In 2028, they have their own first, and then in 2029, they have their pick, Dallas's pick, Phoenix's pick, and then, from there, it's just their own picks. But they do have, like, other picks, and those Phoenix picks will probably become good. I don't see Phoenix being good in 2024, or in 2029. They're not even that good now, as far as, like, record goes. So if you could get more picks, that kind of is the way that you get better, because free agency hasn't worked for them. Trades haven't really worked for them, And they have a history in this franchise of having stars and then it not working out. So I think you really just want to get your own guys. Try and get a good 2025 pick. Try and get picks that will elevate your team sooner rather than later. Like, 2025 is a good class. If you can get somehow a pick that's like an early lottery pick, Cooper Flagg's right there. Cooper Flagg is insane, right? Great defender, good upside on offense. Ace Bailey is another one that's really good. 2026 is Cam Boozer, I'm pretty sure, and he's really good. You have these prospects coming out that are really good. This class is not really good, but 2025, from what I'm aware, is supposed to be a fairly good class. So when you think about, like, the middle ground of NBA fandom, I think of the Brooklyn Nets right now, and that's the last place you really want to be, because Mikal Bridges is not a lead option. He's just not. Cam Thomas is a fun player, but he's not going to be a lead option on a playoff team, probably. Just not. Ben Simmons just got season-ending surgery again, and he seems to kind of have his days behind him. I wouldn't be shocked if he retired in a couple of years. It sucks. I don't want Ben Simmons to have to go through this. I liked him in Philadelphia, but also at a certain point, you have a couple of back surgeries. Like, it's a miracle that Michael Porter Jr. is still playing, right? He's had 3 back surgeries. I think this is Ben Simmons' second back surgery. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's what that is. And he's dealt with injuries for the last 3 seasons or so. And he has just not been able to put together a healthy stretch in that amount of time. And at a certain point, if your body just doesn't hold up, we saw Otto Porter Jr. recently retire because of his body not holding up. I wouldn't be shocked if Ben Simmons had that same thing. But for the time being, they have Ben Simmons on the books for like 30 plus mil. over the next couple of seasons. And it's going to be hard to free cap space. It's going to be hard to move that contract. You know, you have Mikal Bridges, who is good and belongs on a contending team, not the Brooklyn Nets. You should probably look to trade him. You have, Dennis Smith Jr. is someone I'd love on the Nuggets, right? He's one of the better guard defenders in the NBA. He knows how to defend now. He's really matured as a player into a good role. But you have a bunch of role players. It's the Isle of Misfit Toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? The Rankin Bass stop-motion one. And you don't have the D-Lo this time to make it work like you did a few seasons ago. You don't have the guy to propel it. And maybe you get that guy. You know, maybe you sign someone in free agency. I think this free agency class is supposed to be fairly weak. You know, there's not a ton of stars or anything. But maybe you find a Jalen Brunson, right? The Knicks signed him after he had a good playoff run, and the Mavericks didn't match it. They didn't. So now Jalen Brunson is arguably the best guard in the East. He's up there at least, you know? Maybe you find your Jalen Brunson. Maybe you find someone who can take you and be a 6th seed for a couple of years. No shame in that. But, yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So, remember, like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you guys haven't seen the last couple of uploads, because they haven't done as well as some of my other ones, I released one about, you know, basketball being a good sport and it deserving better than it's currently getting as far as, like, fandom goes. And then I also had a podcast go up with Samson Folk, who is a great writer at Raptors Republic, talking about the Raptors, you know, past, present, future, and that's going to be the start of the series that I'm doing, leading up to a bigger project, hopefully like a mini documentary sort of thing, and I'm going to be doing that with fans of every NBA team. So if you guys have any people you want to see on a podcast, leave them below. I can't guarantee that I'll get everybody, but I have some connections, so I can try and finagle some people. So, yeah. I also released a article on my Substack. I did launch a Substack. That's where I'm going to be writing from now on. So, I wrote a piece on the Nuggets transition offense this season and why it's kind of not as good as it has been, aka last in the league. So, yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.